In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the simple top into a pussy bow blouse. So the first thing that we want to do is to create a neck drop. Measure this on your body and decide how low you want your neck drop to be. And then mark this on your pattern. I'm going to open up my neckline, like so. Next, I want to work out how big my neckline is at the front and back so that I can work out how big to make my ties. So I'm going to take my front and my back and I'm going to line those up at the shoulder seam. And then I'll take my tape measure and I'll measure around, measuring the sewing line so that I know how big the piece that's going to be actually attached to the neckline needs to be. And that is 11.5 centimetres. Next, I want to make my ties. To work out how big I want my bow to be, I can take my tape measure and I can create a little bow to get an idea about how long I want my tails to be and how big I want my loop to be. I think that's about right. I might just extend the loop slightly. And then the tails, I think I'm going to take down to about 27, so that they land just below the bust apex, in between the bust apex and the waist. So I need my ties to be the length of the neckline on the sewing line where it's going to attach to, which was 11.5, and then the size of the bow that I want to create, which was 27. So that means I need my ties to be 38 centimetres. So I'm going to take my ruler and my dot and cross paper and just mark myself out my first line, making it a bit longer than the size that I need, and making sure that I'm not going too close to the edge of the paper because of course I need to add seam allowance. I'm going to square off the top. Now I'm going to want to make my ties around 5 centimetres finished width. So at half scale that's going to be 2.5 centimetres. I'm going to make this in 2 pieces so that we've got a seam running around the neckline just to give a little bit more structure and stop the collar from collapsing. I'll probably also add some lightweight interfacing to this to make sure that the bow has a little bit of structure, especially if I'm using a lightweight fabric like a viscose or a light satin. So then I want to measure 38 centimetres and mark that. And next I want to mark where my tie is going to attach to my neckline. Now I'm going to put a seam in the back so that I don't need to cut very long strips of fabric and it's more economical with the fabric. So I'll have my back seam just here, and then I'm going to mark 11.5 centimetres down, which will tell me where the necktie is going to attach at the back and the front and where it's going to end and become the bow. So I'll measure down 11.5 centimetres and just give myself a little notch there. finally, the last thing to do is to add the seam allowances. And I'm going to mark the point where I put the notches with an F, because that is where it will attach to the front of the neckline of my top. I'm also going to label the ties. And I'm also going to add that it's got a 7mm seam allowance. Now on my front piece, I'm going to add a seam allowance to the front, because I want to add a front seam to make this opening easier to sew and in line with my design. I'm just going to extend the hem and the neckline. And then on the back, I don't want a back seam, so I'm going to remove that. And then finally, I'm just going to mark up my front and my back pieces the same as my other piece. So we are looking at it being a pussy bow blouse. And we need to cut 2, because we've added that seam allowance to the front. And then this is the back, and cut 1 unfold. I can extend these lines like this, and we don't need that back notch.